Hey, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to build wealth starting out with no money. So if you're in that position right now where you haven't got a lot of money, but you want to know how to become wealthy, how to build wealth, I'm going to give you some tips in this video, which is how I did it. I started from absolute scratch. I had no money to my name and I built up my wealth in quite a fast time actually. It was really in about 3 or 4 years that I did it. So I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. I'm going to give you some tips so that you can do it as well. So the first thing I'm going to say is, if you've watched some of these videos on YouTube like I have, you've got to take a lot of that advice with a pinch of salt. And the reason I say that is because a lot of these people were already wealthy, so they can't really relate or understand the point of view that you're coming from. So they already had money. So they're teaching you to become wealthy based on having a lot of money already. So that doesn't apply to maybe 80% of people who want to get wealthy. So with that in mind, I'm going to already presuppose that you haven't got any money and you're starting from scratch, because that's the same position that I was in. I started from absolute scratch, not a penny, and I'm going to show you how I did it basically through this video. So the first thing that you really need to understand is a mathematical concept. Now, at school, college, university, pretty much everywhere in society, there is a model, a pre-existing model, which is a government model, which they want you to fit in with. And fitting in with that model might be good for them and society, but it's not necessarily good for you or for everyone in general. Like for me specifically, it definitely doesn't fit me. And that is exchanging time for money. Now, if you're an employee, this makes perfect sense. You go to work every day, you get paid a set rate, and you exchange your time for that hourly wage. Great. Now, if that's where you want to be and you enjoy that, great. But for most people, you will never get wealthy that way by exchanging your time for money, unless you are a very high-paid employee. So I'll give you an example. I was teaching a young girl about 3 weeks ago who wanted to become a doctor. And I was talking to her. Her parents brought her to me. Now her parents are like a surgeon and like a neurosurgeon, something like that. So they earn really, really high amounts of money. And what I was explaining to her is, yeah, your parents do earn a lot of money, but people who are, say, business owners or investors earn 10, 100, 1,000 times more than your parents. And it really surprised her because she'd never heard of this concept before. So if you think about some of the richest people in the world, like Jeff Bezoz, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, you'll notice that they are not exchanging their time for money. What they're doing is they're using employees, so they have all employees, and they will have those employees work for them to bring in line this vision to create a business. Now what that does is the business creates profit, which they then have shares in that business and they make dividends and the like. And that's how they build their wealth. Now, to get to that level, it isn't easy. And even if you think of Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, they all started in like that, working from their garage, or Steve Jobs. He worked from his garage and he's all dirty in his garage. That's how they start. And they build up slowly. So let's talk about how you actually do that. Now, I don't actually know any successful billionaire or big entrepreneur that started from scratch that didn't put in a lot of hard work. I don't know any. If you do, drop it in the comments below, because I've never heard of one that did it without hard work. Most of the people, they will work 16, 18-hour days in some cases. And I know, coming from an army background, I remember I used to work 20-hour days some days in the army, especially when we were in overseas territories. Sometimes you'd only get a few hours sleep a night. So when you've got that mindset and you apply that into the business world, it makes a huge difference because you're already so disciplined and you're used to that environment. But if you're not coming from that environment and you're coming from, say, school or college, you might be used to working, say, 5 hours a day. Now, first thing is that is not going to get you to build a lot of wealth. I can promise you that straight away. You will not build wealth that way. You've got to have really hard work. You've got to be dedicated and disciplined. And you've got to make a lot of sacrifices as well. When I first started, I'm really open about this. My first 2 businesses actually weren't successful. I thought they'd be successful straight away, but they weren't. The first one I took a loss on, the second one I broke even, and the third one was really where I built up a lot of money. Now, the main thing that I did, and I'd advise you to do, is you've got to cut your expenses as low as you possibly can. So I went from living in quite a nice place to living in a house, a shared house. So I lived in a room within a shared house. So that's how I started out. My room was a few £100s a month, I think it was. So it's very low cost. I cut all of my expenses right down so that I had excess money then to invest into the business. So that's the one thing I'd recommend. You know, I mentor so many people, as you already know, and sometimes people come to me and we're talking about their expenses and we're looking it over. People have got like 60, 70, 80 pounds, or sometimes like American people, like $100 phone bills. That's crazy. That's absolutely like bonkers that you would have a phone bill like that. You know, my phone bill is unlimited messages, calls, data, everything. I pay about £15 a month. So really, you've got to shop around. You've got to do this for all of your expenses. You've got to look at them and you've got to bring them right down. So that's the first thing. What we're talking about right now is laying these foundations for wealth. You've got to get your foundations now, because if you don't get it now, you'll never have it. Okay, point number 2 is education. Now, I'm not talking about a formal education, school, college, university. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a financial and a personal education. So that's business, entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, accounting. You've really got to learn all of these things. Now, you might say to me, yeah, that's easy for you to say, Neil, because you've already got money and you can develop yourself and you can learn all these things, but I haven't got any money. Okay, well, that's not an excuse, because when I started, I didn't have any money, and I would go to the public library and I would take out business books and personal development books. And if they didn't have them, I would ask the library to order them for me. So it's no excuse to say, like, I haven't got any money to do it. The other thing is, you know, you think back 20 years, I didn't really have anything to get me started. But if you look now, you've got like YouTube, you've got the internet, you've got all these resources. Everything you can ever want to know is free on the internet. Like, you can go on and you can study, you can read books, you can listen to audio books, you can watch video training like this here, where you're getting educated from people who are already experts and who have already gone to where you want to go to. So that's the first thing. If you haven't got any money, start with all these free resources, free training, and just start to get your mind in that mode and start setting your goals to where you want to go. Because there's one thing I can tell you: if you don't set yourself goals as to where you want to go in terms of your wealth, you'll never get there. You'll never get there. And I actually remember when I first set the goal of making £10,000 a month. And I'd never earned anywhere. I hadn't even earned $3,000 or $4,000 a month in my life. And I thought, this is impossible. How will I ever earn $10,000 a month? But because I put it as a goal and I followed all these principles I'm teaching you here, I slowly started to see my income going up and up and up and up. Up and up and up. And then when I was in a sales role whilst I was doing my first business, I remember I had my first £15,000 week. So that was 1 week I earned £15,000 in commissions. And that didn't include the money I'd made from my business. So I really put that down to setting those goals and just following that path and doing these things and developing myself constantly. The next part within, the education side of this is you've got to get yourself a good mentor. It is absolutely paramount that you get yourself a good mentor. And not just choose any mentor, you've really got to check that this mentor is qualified to actually educate you and teach you. And I don't mean like a degree or some sort of a formal qualification. I mean they're qualified in the sense that you can see them, you can see their results for yourself, you can see they're successful, you might see their businesses or their accounts or whatever it is that they're willing to show you. And then you've got that validation, you've got that proof, and then you really want to speak to someone else who has been mentored by them. That's what I always recommend. You want to get at least one testimonial from someone, like you want to speak to them. Because even testimonials, like you think, let's say my property training course, I've got 300-400 testimonials. When it gets to that level, you can't fake that many testimonials. It's almost impossible to do it. But if you see someone's website and they've got like 3 or 4 testimonials, it's just like some text and a name, it can be faked very easily. So you've really got to do your due diligence and find out if that mentor is qualified. But definitely get yourself a mentor. And again, if you're thinking, I can't afford a mentor right now, that tells me that you're not saving at least 10% of your money for your education fund. So that's another tip I'd do straight away. Start saving for your education fund. And the other thing you can do if you really haven't got a penny to your name right now, is read biographies. Read biographies of great entrepreneurs and business people. People like Walt Disney. That's a great one by Bob Thomas. I love that book. Another one is Made in America, Sam Walton, founder of Walmart. Another great business book. There's just so many out there that you can read, and they can become your mentor, as it were, until you can afford to get your own mentor. And then finally, coinciding with the education, you have to understand tax law. I resisted this for so long, and I got burned so badly. I mean, I paid out way too much in taxes because I didn't understand how it worked. And the other mistake I made was that I hired a cheap accountant. I got a really cheap accountant, and it ended up costing me like tens of thousands more than it should have done if I'd have just got a really good accountant in the first place. So by getting myself a really good accountant, it ended up saving me a lot of tax, so that in some cases my tax bill had been neutralized. So it saved me a lot of money. The other thing you need to know about accountants is that they're very reactive. I've never really met an accountant that's very proactive. So what I mean by that is that they're always 2 or 3 months behind on your accounts. They're very reactive to it. They're not super proactive, like saying, okay, Neil, you've just opened this new company and this new company, and you've got this new investment. So let's look at that and let's see how we can mitigate the tax. It doesn't really happen. So you've really got to become a tax expert yourself. You've got to learn tax law, understand it, so that when your accountants are doing all that for you, you can actually look at it and say, okay, is this right or wrong? The third and final point, which is the most important point in the video, is really about the investing side. So here's the next level within the foundation that we're talking about here, and that's saving money. Now you're probably thinking, Neil, I don't want to save money. I just want to get rich and I want to get wealthy. It's not really possible without saving. And you can ask anyone, any top investor, and they'll all tell you the same thing. You have to save some of your money in order to get wealthy. Now, I'll tell you how I did it. I would save 20% every month of any income that I had. 20% straight away into a savings account that I couldn't touch. 20% next month, any little things I had, any other income streams. As soon as it came in, if I didn't need it, I'd put 100% of it in. So let's say I've set up a new income stream and I hadn't raised my expenses, that 100% of that would go straight into a savings account, right? So what I would do then is, once I'm building up these funds, building, I would take those funds and I would put them into an investment. Businesses and property or real estate. With all the tax changes that have happened recently in the UK, I actually sold a lot of my property investment, and now I'm investing into property that I don't own, right? So I'm taking them on very long-term leases or option to purchase contracts. I'm investing that money and I'm getting about a 350% return on investment from houses that I don't own, but I'm managing and I'm renting out as, say, houses of multiple occupancy, right? So I might take, say, £2,000 or £3,000, put it into a house that I don't own, which I've got on a long-term 5-year contract, or even an option to purchase that in 10 years. And then I'm taking this house and I'm turning it into a multiple occupancy house, and I'm making like £1,000 a month profit in the middle on some of these houses. So that's what I mean by how I'm doing it. I have different businesses, different property businesses, from sourcing to investments to like lettings and management. So it's very diversified. So that's what I do. I take my money and I invest it back into these things where I've got experience. It's now the third thing that I invest in. So I said 2, but there is actually a third, and that's in myself. So I will constantly reinvest back into myself, back into like me as a business. Like, you've got to think, I am a business, I'm a brand, so I constantly reinvest back into myself. Everything from my image, from getting tailored clothing made, how I look, from the equipment that I have for my videos and the like, my office, my businesses, my online platforms. So they're more external things, but I also invest into mentoring, seminars, training, travel to go to courses and seminars in other countries. Just about to land on a really beautiful island. Different books, my library, I don't know how much it's worth, £5,000-10,000. I'm constantly reinvesting back into it, back into myself, into my own education. Because the more you educate yourself, the more wealth you'll build and the smarter you'll get in business. So That is really it for this video. If you like the video, make sure to click the like button, subscribe so you get more of these videos, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.